Right now I have in my hand Nikon D3400 DSLR camera. So this camera is almost 7-year old now. This was launched in 2016. But is it still a good choice to buy in 2023 or not? Can it still take great photos? Whether this camera is still relevant? Let's find out. If you are new to my channel, consider subscribing it and pressing the notification icon so that you are always notified whenever I post a new video. This camera sports a 24 megapixel sensor, and I would say the sensor is pretty good, and it does not have this anti-aliasing filter in front of that. So because of that, you get really very sharp images with this camera compared to some of the even newer cameras. Dynamic range of this camera is really excellent. It's around 13.9 EV. So this is an excellent camera. If you want to do landscape photography, you can get really nice high dynamic range photos even with one single click. Autofocus on this camera is pretty good in photography. It has 11 autofocus point, and even in low lighting situation it does the job. But when it comes to video, it hunts a lot. Now let me talk about the video specification of this camera. This camera can shoot full HD video up to 60 frames per second. So the video looks really sharp, the colors and the contrast, everything is really excellent. But there are three main drawbacks when it comes to video with this camera. The first drawback is that you cannot connect an external microphone in this camera. If you compare this camera with Nikon D3300, that camera had a microphone input jack, but this camera do not have it. So because of that, you will not be able to get good audio when you are recording a video. And the other drawback is that this has a fixed screen and it's not a touch screen. So it's gonna be really difficult if you want to shoot YouTube video or if you want to vlog with this camera. And the third major drawback when it comes to video is that the autofocus on this camera in video is not so reliable, especially if you are doing continuous video. If you are doing a fixed video, if you are not tracking the subject, then it's fine, it's gonna keep the focus on your face. But if you are in the continuous focus mode, sometimes it will keep your face in focus, sometimes it would focus somewhere on the background, and it would keep on doing focus hunting in and out. Because of that, the video experience is completely ruined. So if you want to shoot video with this camera, try not to use the continuous focus mode. And if you need a better audio, then maybe you can record your audio externally in some external audio device and later on sync the video and audio in the post. However, when it comes to photography, this camera is excellent, I would say. As I already told you, the dynamic range is really good. It takes really sharp photos, and even if you compare the image quality of this camera with some of the newer camera like Z50 or Z30 or ZFC or even some full frame camera, this still does a great job. Even the low lighting performance of this camera is excellent. The ISO range on the camera goes from 100 up to 25,600. So even in low lighting situation, this camera takes excellent photos. Now I'm gonna show you how this camera looks from close-up. So this is how D3400 camera looks. Overall, the build quality is pretty good. You have a nice grip, so when you hold this camera in your hand, so it actually feels good, and it is pretty easy to change all the settings because the ergonomics on this camera is really good. So if you are holding your camera like this, so with your thumb you can very easily change the shutter speed or aperture. From the top it looks like this. So you have this dial where you have the different modes, then you have this red button if you want to start or stop the video recording, and the on off switch is over here, and this is the shutter button which you press to take the photo. And the back of the camera looks like this. So it has a 3-inch screen, and this is not a touch screen. So all the settings that you need to do is using these buttons. And since this is not an articulating screen, so it's a bit difficult if you want to do vlogging or YouTube video with this camera. And it also have a live view. So but you can already see, before taking the photo, rotate the zoom ring to extend the lens. So this camera have this lock on the lens. So unless your lens is unlocked, you will not be able to take any photos. But now it is unlocked, so I am able to use the live view. So you can see this is how the live view looks. From this side you can see you have the option to connect this camera to an external monitor using the HDMI port, and you have this micro USB as well. And this camera also have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and the SD card for the camera goes over here. And if I show you the bottom of the camera. So it is over here where we put the battery. Overall, the build quality of the camera is pretty good and the ergonomics are also good, and this camera is very easy to use for any beginner. The weight of the camera is around 400 grams and it's pretty lightweight, and the ergonomics are really excellent in this camera. You can definitely use this camera with just one hand. With just one hand you can change shutter speed, aperture and all the settings. So as is the case with most of the Nikon camera, this camera is really having very good ergonomics and a really nice grip, and since it is lightweight, so you do not get tired even if you are using this camera for the entire day. And the battery life is also really very good. Nikon rates the battery around 700, but in ideal world situation you can definitely get around 500 shots with the full charge of the battery. Now let me put onto the screen the sample photos that I've taken with this camera. So the most of the photos that I've taken are using this 18 to 55 mm kit lens, and the kit lens that comes with this camera is a AFP lens, and this AFP lens is virtually silent. So when it comes to video making, it does not make this focusing noise, and the autofocus transition is very fast as well compared to the older AFS lens, and the image quality is excellent as well. It takes really very sharp photos, and the other photos that I've taken were using this 18-105 VR lens. That lens I would say is a very versatile lens. It's a kind of a mid-range zoom and a really all-rounder kind of lens. It gives you range from 18 up to 105, so it is an excellent lens if you want to do street photography. And the images that came out of this camera were straight JPEG, no editing whatsoever, and they look excellent. I am totally impressed by the image quality of this camera. So in terms of photography, I would give this camera 8.5 out of 10, because given the price for which you can get this camera and the kind of images this camera takes, it is an excellent choice, because you can get this camera used for around $200 or maybe even lesser depending on the condition of the camera. And in this price range, the kind of image that you get with this camera, I don't think there is any other camera in the market which can match the image quality at this price point. Another really good thing in this camera is that this camera also have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So because of that, you can pair your smartphone with the camera and wirelessly transfer images directly from the camera onto your phone using the Nikon Snap Bridge app. Now I'm gonna put onto the screen the sample video that I've taken with this camera. So this is the kind of video that you can expect with this camera. It's a great camera. The sensor is really great. The video has a lot of sharpness. I would show you some close-up and what kind of background blur you can get with this. So I'm gonna focus on this leaf, and you can see how sharp the leaf looks, and the background is also out of focus. Now I'm gonna focus on this fence. See the details in the video. The sensor is really good on this camera, so that's why you get a lot of details in your video as well. Let me focus on this leaf. See, and the lens that I'm using is 18 to 55 mm AFP lens, and this is a very silent lens, and the autofocus is very quiet and the focus hunting is not so much in this lens. However, if you want to shoot vlogging kind of video, or if you want to sit in front of the camera while recording, then it can do some kind of a focus hunting. But if you are behind the camera, then it's not a problem. You can use this camera to make great video. You can see how nice the video looks. Even shifting the focus from one place to another, there is not much of a focus breathing, and see the details that you can get in the video. Overall, it's a really good camera for making videos only if you are behind the camera. If you are in front of the camera, then this is not the best camera. Then you should look for some camera with dual pixel autofocus or the latest Nikon mirrorless camera, and those having a flip out screen, because in this camera you cannot see if you are in focus or not, because there is no flip out screen. Now the final question: should you get this camera in 2023 or not? Is this camera still relevant? Well, I would say if you are into photography, you need excellent photos, you want to do portrait photography or landscape photography, this camera can do excellent job given the high dynamic range on this camera. and the excellent sharpness and the image quality and the sensor in this camera. However, if you are also into making video, then maybe this camera is not a good choice for you. Maybe then you can go for Nikon D3300, because that camera can have an external mic as well and you can get better audio. But with this camera you cannot connect an external mic, so because of that the video won't be so good. But if you are only and only into photography mainly and you need excellent images, then I would say this would be the best camera in the second-hand market for under $200 US. And if this camera is still relevant, definitely this camera is totally relevant. Given the kind of images you can take with this camera, they are almost at par with some of the latest mirrorless camera. But the autofocus is not so good. Of course, the autofocus on the latest mirrorless camera is much better. They have the eye autofocus, they have the face tracking autofocus, and even the animal eye autofocus. So this camera do not have all those features. But if you are into portrait photography or landscape photography, you do not require eye autofocus and those kind of autofocus. You can pretty much focus on the eye of the subject or somewhere in the landscape and really get very sharp photos even with this camera. So definitely this camera is still relevant and you can get this camera used in 2023 and still get excellent results. If you liked my video, please like it, share it, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to press the notification icon, and feel free to comment if you want to know more about this camera. I will see you in a new video.